Hi, I'm Brad Dacus, president and founder of the Pacific Justice Institute. Welcome to Faith and Law. Now let's take a look at this trending viral video. Conservatives. Lots of conservative students. They're not smashing any windows. Very good. Well, folks, I don't know about you, but I find this really encouraging to see students, lots of students, demonstrating with their values, not the values of the teachers' union being pushed upon them by liberal teachers in our public schools, but rather these students standing up for what they believe in a peaceful way. They weren't burning anything. There was no violence. It was very civil. And they were standing up for their rights. They were standing up for women, young girls, not to have their rights disturbed by a male, a boy, coming in and competing in their sports. We see this happening in public schools across the country. President Joe Biden is pushing it and trying to mandate it in every public school, trouncing upon the rights of these young women, young girls who've worked so long for so many years to reach an element of expertise and proficiency in their athletic competition, and yet to have it all smashed with hopes of scholarships and awards because males are coming in and stealing the trophy, whether it's swimming, wrestling, whatever. So it's really refreshing to see young people getting it, realizing that if they continue to be silent, they will lose their rights. And they're speaking up. And we at Pacific Justice Institute salute that. And you know what, folks out there, young people out there, if anyone steps on your right to give your perspective, and you have a school district or a teachers union harassing you because you have a conservative worldview or biblical worldview, give us a call. We're there to help. Our rights are a gift from God, and they're to be used for God's glory and to further God's kingdom. We're opening the door for government, under the same guise of health and safety, to be able to control our lives, whether it's in terms of our privacy, our information, where we go, even how we live our lives.
I had been told that if I didn't get the vaccine that I would not be able to continue my education.
31 offices across the country handling over 185 cases in active litigation. This just doesn't come out of thin air.
The Supreme Court of the United States ruled in our favor.
This year, police arrested a Christian man exercising his right to free speech.
Hundreds of parents were at the state capitol today, and they were protesting new guidelines for sex education in public schools.
The world's way, it's to isolate, silence, and destroy.
So you're really seeking to represent the low-profile, overlooked group of people in our communities, but then you also don't charge a cent. And so I want to know why you do that and how that happens.
We do it because I believe that's what Jesus would want us to do. Now, we also have civil liberties issues, not just dealing with the schools, but we have a lot of civil liberties issues dealing with the workplace, particularly Title VII cases involving employees who have sincerely held religious beliefs and they want to be accommodated. That's what Title VII requires. All too often, we at PJI have witnessed case after case involving a medical worker, an RN, a doctor, who are told you have to get the vax or you lose your job. Now, Title VII protects workers who have sincerely held religious beliefs, and they need to be reasonably accommodated. But what we're finding is that a lot of the times, these workers are not accommodated at all. Now, to help us talk about one of those cases, I'd like to bring on now Catherine Hartley from the PJI office in Idaho. Welcome, Catherine, to the program.
Thank you, Brad, for having me on.
So, Catherine, tell us about this case involving Julie Brackley, who was fired by the Denver Indian Health and Family Services. What happened?
Our client, Ms. Brackney, was employed by a healthcare corporation in Denver. And like many of our clients, had been working for quite some time during the pandemic, and she was performing her job duties and was completing all of the requirements of her job, and she was doing a very good job. And once the vaccine mandates came out, and her employer was no exception to this, they had a vaccine mandate, and she requested an accommodation to this mandate based on her sincerely held religious beliefs. And again, despite the fact that for months she was able to work without having the vaccine, her employer would not accommodate her, and they ultimately terminated her from employment.
So our client didn't just refuse the vax. She gave sincere religious beliefs. She described her religious beliefs in detail, right? So what was her religious beliefs that compelled her not to take the vax?
Ms. Brackney is a Christian, and she believes that her body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and therefore she needs to honor God with what substances she puts into her body. So she read scripture and prayed extensively before making this decision to abstain from the vaccine.
Well, Catherine, there are many, many people that we at PJI have helped all across the country that have similar, strongly held religious beliefs against taking this very controversial, quote unquote, vaccine. So she's just one of many that we're helping. And yet, what happens, Catherine, if we don't take on these cases? What if we don't represent people like her? What happens to these men and women in the workplace across America, and in particular in the medical and health professions?
That's a really great question, Brad. And I think there are multiple answers to that. I think, first of all, eliminating people of faith in healthcare, especially when there's already a very taxed healthcare system. So eliminating people of faith who are good workers is catastrophic to healthcare. And really in all professions, we need to remember that people have a right to maintain their beliefs and their religious freedoms in any profession, including in healthcare. And we need to remember, in this country, religious freedom is a core value that doesn't go away during a pandemic or any other situation. And especially in healthcare, think of the repercussions of eliminating the ability for people to live out their faith. Then you would have healthcare workers who are being forced to do all kinds of things that would violate their faith. And that can have very far-reaching implications. And that's why it's really important for us to be taking on these cases and not allowing employers to say that people of faith are not important, that they are second-class employees, which is just absolutely not true.
Okay, Catherine, so where does this case go from here? Where are we at?
This case is in very early stages. We have filed the complaint, and we are awaiting an answer from the defendant. So there's not much to update other than we have filed this case, and we will go from there.
Well, Catherine, thank you for the work you're doing on this case. I know it's important, not just to our client, but to the many others out there in similar situations that will need our help as well. God bless. So, folks, Julie's case is not isolated. In fact, we at PJI are representing people of faith all across the United States where they're being fired unreasonably because of their sincerely held religious beliefs not to take a very controversial, quote unquote, vaccine. This is very basic to our civil liberties, not to have to choose between being able to put bread and butter on the table and not denying our faith and following God's direction as a Christian. So this is very fundamental in terms of civil liberties. We have another similar case in the health profession involving an individual, Lynn Kaiser, who was an RN, and she'd worked for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. To help talk about this case, I'd like to bring on now our attorney out of Mississippi, Ronald Hackenberg. Welcome to the show, Ronald.
Thank you, Brad. Good to be with you.
Now, Ronald, I understand that this case involving this RN is somewhat unique in that she's not someone who is actually working in the hospital, right? Give us more information about this case.
Brad, you are correct. This is another employee in the medical field who was fired because she has sincerely held religious beliefs that prevent her from taking the COVID-19 vaccination. She submitted an excellent letter describing her religious beliefs and suggested a method of accommodation. She also requested to speak with St. Jude about accommodation in accordance with EEOC guidelines. But what she got in return was a letter that simply said her accommodation was denied, either get vaccinated or be terminated. But it turns out this only scratches the surface of the callous and discriminatory way she was treated. Through discovery, we learned that St. Jude went outside their own policy to fire her and then submitted misleading information to the court to justify their actions.
So, Ron, what was her job description at work? It's very different than other RNs. She wasn't actually dealing directly with patients actually in the hospital, right?
That's right, Brad. Her information technology position did not involve any contact in the patient areas. She worked from home during the height of the pandemic, and she was part of a 4-person team. The other 3 team members worked from home, far away from St. Jude. But when PJI sent a demand letter regarding her denial, St. Jude's reply was that she was going to be fired because she worked with patients. They had incorrect dates of hire and certification for her, and we felt for sure that they had the wrong employee. So we wrote back telling them they had the wrong employee, but we got a nasty reply from their private counsel telling us that Mrs. Kaiser did not know her own job. Then they fired her. For the past 2 years, we've been asking to have her reinstated and given back pay. We've been asking to discuss her accommodation, but they refused to do so, and they refused to reasonably negotiate with us. During discovery, we found out that working with patients is something they speculated would happen more than a year after she was fired. There was no need to fire her so quickly. They had a year they could have taken to look for another position for her. They could have found a way to accommodate her current position, which we learned was very simple to do. Or for all they knew, the pandemic could have even ended in that year.
Okay, so I see no rational basis here to deny her a reasonable accommodation. I mean, she's not even there with the patients in the hospital. This makes absolutely no sense. At least to me, it doesn't. Was this RN in any way negligent with regards to doing her job?
She was not negligent. You know, Brad, most people have a positive opinion of St. Jude. I mean, for goodness sakes, they treat children with cancer. But the way their administration has treated this 59-year-old Christian woman is deplorable. They refused 3 written requests to discuss her job accommodation before she was fired. They refused to consider looking at another open position for her because they said they didn't have to. By the way, the Supreme Court disagrees with that. But they actually went so far as to provide misleading information to us and to the court to justify their actions against Mrs. Kaiser. St. Jude had a written policy that said they would interview the employee's immediate supervisor in all requests for religious accommodation. In several sworn depositions and declarations filed with the court, they said they could not interview her supervisor because the supervisor resigned in early August of 2021, and the denial letter was dated August 20, 2021. We asked to speak to that supervisor, but they said they had no idea how we could locate her. Well, we did find her in another state, and it turns out that she was working for St. Jude well past the date for the ruling on Mrs. Kaiser's request. She actually worked there until September 7th of 2021. But she was not interviewed. And why not? because as the supervisor stated in a declaration to the court, Mrs. Kaiser could have been easily accommodated, and the supervisor pointed out 3 ways they could have done so. Had St. Jude filed their own policy and interviewed this supervisor, Mrs. Kaiser's recommendation would have been for her to be accommodated and to keep her job. Instead, they orchestrated her firing at age 59 with immediate termination of pay, along with her health care and other benefits.
So there was absolutely no justifiable reason to fire her. They just didn't want to accommodate her sincerely held religious beliefs. And we're talking here about St. Jude Hospital. I mean, this is a nonprofit medical institution founded on a religious basis, a religious conviction, like many hospitals across the country. And yet what we see is they're turning away from that foundation, that religious foundation, instead being intolerant and even outright hostile towards people of faith, towards Christians. That's what this case is about. And the fact that St. Jude's is out there trying to raise money and get donations from people of faith, while at the same time they're backhandedly firing people because of their Christian faith, I find deplorable. Absolutely deplorable. And I think there's going to be other people out there who agree with me on this moving forward. Okay, Ron, how do you see this case going in the future?
Brad, this case is in federal district court in the Western District of Tennessee. St. Jude had filed a motion for summary judgment, and our response contains the declaration from the supervisor. When they were confronted with this declaration, St. Jude has now admitted that the supervisor worked until September 7th. We're waiting for the judge's decision on the motion, and a jury trial is scheduled for January of 2024.
Well, Ron, thank you for the work you're doing in this case. And let's hope and pray we get this matter settled and that St. Jude will see the light of day and do the right thing. God bless. Well, folks, you may know of someone out there who is in a similar situation where they're not being reasonably accommodated because of their faith and workplace. Or maybe there's another issue involving religious freedom or parents' rights or the sanctity of human life. I want you to feel free to contact us at PJI. That's what we're here for. In fact, if you'd like to support our work, we're a nonprofit 501c3 ministry. Just go to our website, pji.org, pji.org. You can also sign up to get our free e-newsletter called The Legal Insider, which will keep you updated with our many, many cases across the country. Right now, I think we have over 200 cases in active litigation that we're taking on, defending people and their fundamental civil liberties across the country without charge. So just go to pji.org. That's pji.org.
Well, they're in the trenches and they're fighting, and PGI is on the front lines for the battle for freedom and liberty. They've been doing so much to equip pastors across the country and to really fight for the values that have made this country so great. Honored to be supportive of PGI.
We're living in a time when Christians are constantly under assault for their beliefs in the marketplace. And if there's not someone to advocate for them and help them with the legal necessities of defending themselves, they're going to get fired. They have no recourse. Most people don't have the resources to go hire a lawyer. It would deplete everything they own. And most lawyers, quite frankly, across the country don't deal in religious liberty issues.
Well, we're living in some very difficult days in America where basic freedoms and especially religious liberty is under attack. And that's one of the reasons why Pacific Justice Institute is so vitally important to the future of this nation. What a great group of lawyers, first-class, top-rate lawyers who are willing to stand up for freedom and stand up for our American citizens under attack.
Yeah, I mean, they can support, they can follow, they can pray. We need more organizations like PJI, and I could tell you that being in the front lines, there's not enough people that are actually in the trenches doing the difficult but tough work, and that's exactly why this organization is so critical.
One of the most incredible things about Pacific Justice Institute is that they do pro bono work. And what does that mean? Well, it means the rest of us have a responsibility. We've got to stand up and provide financial incentives and financial opportunities for these attorneys to get out there and do the fighting. And that's one of the reasons why we have Pacific Justice Institute attorneys on my national radio show, because we want to let people know, hey, there's a need here. These folks are doing very important work, and they're doing very important, successful work as well. And that's why they need our support.
When a Christian is targeted for his or her beliefs, it affects every believer in America. This idea that, well, it didn't happen to me, well, you're next. And when Pacific Justice Institute takes on a case, it's not just that one individual that they really are representing, because a legal precedent may be established from that will protect 1 million believers who could be in the same position for the exact same issue.
Okay, folks, so we've looked at these issues dealing with Title VII and reasonable accommodation from a legal perspective. But I always like to go back to the Word of God as our final resting point, because that is the basis of truth. And the first verse I want to take a look at is Jeremiah 30:17. It says, "For I will restore health to you, and your wounds I will heal, declares the Lord." Health is important to the Lord. God, by His grace, has given us hospitals. And these hospitals were founded for His glory. You've seen hospitals all across the country, Saint this and Saint that, and different hospitals by their very name reflective of the fact that they were founded by people of faith, by Christians, for a purpose to carry out this calling of love and grace and help to those in medical need. And yet, ironically, we see these same hospitals, as in the case of St. Jude, going in the other direction, going divergent from God, divergent from people of faith, and showing bigotry and hostility, even arguably hatred towards people of faith. We can't stand for that, and we need to call it out, and that's just what we're doing at PJI. Now, another very important verse I thought was very relevant to our discussion today was John chapter 8, verse 31 through 32. It says, "If you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Our society today, folks, is telling us, ordering us not to say the truth. We see this with the pronoun issue, right? We see it with all kinds of employment issues where you're told to say something that you know is not true. We as believers must stand by the word and speak the truth in love, but speak the truth. And when we're dealing with people of faith in the workplace, and they have a conviction from the Holy Spirit not to do something, or inversely to do something, and it's contrary to what they're being ordered to do or to say, they need to stand up and make sure that they are complying with holding fast to truth and not hiding that truth and not giving in to denying that truth. This is so fundamental to our nations, our founding as a nation, never to force anyone to say something contrary to their beliefs or to have to do something directly contrary to their fundamental beliefs. That's a part of their relationship with God. We at PJI, folks, are committed to doing just that, to standing by people with those beliefs and those convictions who want to live and practice the truth. So, folks, no matter what we face in our society today, no matter what the challenge, let us always remember to always keep the faith.
Hi, my name is Todd Brigetta. I'm the pastor of Orchard Community Church in Campbell, California, right in the heart of Silicon Valley. We are so thankful for Pacific Justice Institute and the relationship that we've had with them over the last 6 months or so. Our first interaction with them and our first relationship with them came in the fall of 2020, when we had been cited by our county for non-compliance in regard to the coronavirus regulations that our county had handed down. Kevin Snyder of Pacific Justice Institute helped us navigate through some of the legalese and some of the questions that we had regarding the citations, and was such a great help for us and answered our questions in a very timely manner through text, through phone call, through email. He was always really quick to respond to our questions and helped us in a great way in that situation. Shortly after that situation, we joined a lawsuit with 4 other churches against the county and against the state in some of the iniquitous rules that they had brought down through the coronavirus regulations in our area. They were iniquitous against churches compared to other secular entities and businesses. And so Pacific Justice Institute and Kevin Snyder again helped us in this process. This case eventually landed in the Supreme Court this last Friday, February 26th, and we were able to get a favorable ruling through the efforts of Pacific Justice Institute. In that ruling, the Supreme Court cited and understood that we had been receiving iniquitous regulations against the churches, and were very helpful in loosening up not only the rules that were a part of that lawsuit, but others just a week after. And so now we're able to meet indoors as churches in these winter months, and that's going to be a huge blessing this Sunday coming up for us as a church to be able to help not only the physical needs of our people, but the spiritual and the relational and emotional needs that they have, to be able to care for our people in a greater way according to the laws of the land, and helping us navigate the benefits that we have as American citizens. And so we are so grateful for the efforts of Pacific Justice Institute and what they've been able to do and accomplish in such an amazing way, and really a historical way, not just for this week, but for the years ahead as we seek to continue to maintain the great rules, the great benefits that we have as American citizens. And we have it all to thank Pacific Justice Institute. Thank you.